Hello. I guess I'm ready to go. So good. Okay. So hi, my name's Kolby ML. I have two last names, Moroz Liebl, and I'm gonna give a talk today on a retrospective on Portal, and I guess a glimpse into the future. So I guess the the original ethos of Ethereum was you basically had like a fully decentralized programmable network where Bitcoin had very limited scripting ability. Ethereum, you actually had something functional and you could use. Originally, users were all expected that they would all run their own full nodes, but over time, that expectation kind of broke down just because over time, the burden to running full nodes grew bigger every year, due mostly to the state. Unblock history, but. So the problem that spawned from that was centralized endpoints. And over time, the reliance on that basically grew and grew as the knowledge requirements grew bigger and bigger. So back before proof of work, you would think you could just like run a Geth node. After the merge, there's a lot more complicated setup. So over time, it just got more and more tedious. And that spawned centralized endpoints, which kind of eroded a lot of the trust assumptions that people made in accessing Ethereum. Just because using a centralized endpoint like Infura, you're basically just trusting their reputation, but they can return you anything. So as the state continuously grows, full node storage and maintenance grows as well, and this is a barrier for like everyday users entering the ecosystem. So early on, it's like, okay, if this state's so big, why do we need it at all? And then from that point, it's like, what if we had a stateless client? Stateless clients are interesting, just in terms of like, if you have no state, what does that really mean? Ethereum's kind of known for its state. Anything built on Ethereum uses the state, except like staking use cases. So I think it's like, how do I access the state, for example? So some of the limitations of statelessness is like, without having access to it, how do you access balances, contracts, and what Ethereum's really known for? Stateless clients trade independency for efficiency. You're still able to verify blocks because every block would basically include a state diff, so you could execute to the next state. But you wouldn't be really storing any of that locally. So there would be potentially challenges if you wanted to build something like, for example, with like fossil inclusion. A lot of those proposals assume that the user has like a high level of state access. So yeah, and then it's like, if nobody's going to be storing this data, who really provides it to you? There is, I guess, opportunities for centralized endpoints, but do you really want to give up like your authority over your data to them? And it's like, what is Ethereum without its state? Well, just consensus isn't really interesting. I guess unless you're just staking and want an ROI on your token. So do light clients exist today? I would say they really don't. There are such things as like light client provers like Helios, which take two centralized endpoints. And through that, you're able to prove if the centralized endpoint is responding with the correct data. But I'd say this has certain burdens with like wallet developers in that if you're a wallet developer, you're often expected to basically be servicing these like full nodes for your users. This could be through like paying through Infura yourself or other things, but it would be really nice if you could just, I guess, run a wallet without needing to have a centralized endpoint. From a developer's perspective, what if you could just build a wallet which could access a distributed network of peers the same way you could with a full node, but you didn't have like that burden of like running the node itself? So I guess like on a continuum, you can think of a really heavy solution would be something like a full node. In terms of something like Geth, I guess there's trade-offs depending on your use case. If you just want to run the head of the chain, well, then you would probably only need 2 terabytes of storage. And in that case, you would only have like recent state accesses. But if you wanted to have like the state and have that verifiable for your users for the whole chain, that'd be around 20 terabytes of storage, just because you would be storing like key value pairs for like all the state that ever existed in tree format. On the extreme other end of the spectrum, you have Infura. Instead of Portal, I was supposed to write the word light there. But Infura is insanely lightweight for users. But you also have the problem of they could send you any data and you wouldn't really know. So right next to that is basically proving centralized endpoints. But who's paying for this endpoint and who's setting it up? If you're requiring your user to provide this endpoint, that's a big knowledge requirement, which could prevent them from like onboarding to your app. So it's like, do we have something that's light, but it's also more aligned? And that's kind of like the mystery mark I have there. So I would say that's kind of Portal. So what if you had full JSON-RPC access, but your user only had to allocate 10 gigabytes of storage instead of 2 to 20 terabytes? And that would include all archival state. Sync times would be instant instead of like 3 to 7 days in like optimal cases. You would just need to participate in a peer-to-peer network instead of like basically running like a full node yourself or paying for centralized infrastructure. So the goal would be like extremely low resource usage, just because it's like, how else would you justify participating in this like distributed network? So the pain points of running a full node would be solved, or are they? So in a solution like this, you would be able to assume that there would be trade-offs between latency and also hardware requirements. So if you didn't store all the data yourself locally, well, then you need to look it up on a network, which would have latency attributed to it. So how does it work? We shared Ethereum's headers, block bodies, and receipts, and state over thousands and thousands of nodes. So each node stores a very small chunk of the data. So for like a header, you would have a key where you could like look that content up on the network. The idea would be we'd be using Kademlia distributed hash tables. So you would basically be able to just like ask your peer, do you know someone closer to this data I want? And then he would give you peers. You would then send another request being like, do you know a closer node with the data I want? And eventually, after like log n lookups, you would be able to find the content you're interested in on the network, which is, so you could think of Portal like every single node is just like a key value database, and then you would just be like, keep on like recursively looking for like the table that stores the data you want. So in Portal, all data would be provable by default. So for bodies and receipts, you would just need to fetch the header, and the header would include basically like a proof to an accumulator in like the beacon state, for example. So historical summaries or historical roots, and that's how we'd handle that. For like the state, you could just like walk the state. So if you have like the header, that's proven, then you could walk the Merkle-Patricia tree to your account, and that's how you would basically build a proof yourself. And the solution would be like fully distributed. There's no like real costs from like the user's perspective. So you could think like for a Java like wallet for Android, you could just embed Portal, and then you could have your like fully decentralized wallet where you don't really need to think about these infrastructure costs. So the vision of Portal was sharded blocks, headers, and state access for lightweight nodes, near access sync times with minimal hardware, and just a few gigabytes of storage and a single CPU core, hopefully like 10% usage. So the philosophy behind this infrastructure wasn't just technical, it was ideological. So you think like, I guess to opt into this, of course there'd be trade-offs. I don't think you would ever really be able to compete with like a centralized provider or a full node you ran yourself. Just because those responses can be made as quickly as like a Web 2 response. But it's like, if you if you believe in like the technology and you want like the sovereignty of like running a full node but without all the hassle, this would be a great solution. And I guess it's kind of like an answer to Ethereum's like centralization drift of like more and more users every year using centralized providers. So recently, I guess what I just talked about kind of died. So the Ethereum Foundation recently had a restructuring and a change in leadership. So Portal's scope was greatly and really heavily reduced to basically only include bodies and receipts for E4 use cases. So you can basically think in this case, if you're running like Geth or any other full node, you'll be able to do like prune history, and you'll be able to get like probably like 60% of your disk space back, which is pretty nice, but a lot limited than the original scope of having a fully provable JSON-RPC in a distributed manner. So a question to the future, as statelessness inches ever so closer, whether this isn't something like Verkle or binary trees, or I guess like ZK proofs, it's like how will nodes access the state? In a lot of like talks I like attend, it's like there's always like, oh, we'll do all this with ZK proofs, but there's never really talks about like how we'll like manage this data in a ZK or post-quantum world. So I think like over time, like as a lot of solutions like fossil, like inclusionless, so like people aren't centered, it's like how will users actually access the state in a decentralized manner, which is aligned? And I think in like 1 to 2 years, something like this project will probably be revived for a use case like that, or just like bootstrapping a stateless node. Of course, like you'd be getting state updates every block, but you would still need to initialize your account. So getting that state somehow is really important. How will it be done? Who knows? So I guess it's like, what's the point of knowing the head of the chain if you have access to none of the data to build your transaction? I have no clue. So I'd say the dream lives on. Universal, uncompromising access to Ethereum's data, I think is really appealing, especially like why I got in, like running a full node, seeing how like it got like worse and worse to run over time. I thought that was really cool, and I'd like to have a future where that's accessible again. Decentralization without heavy burdens. Ideally, a user doesn't need any technical knowledge to like run a node. It should be like embedded in their app they're using, which is what like Portal was being built for, and a vision worth continuing. So I really believe that a solution like this will be continued in 2 years, as I said earlier. So I'd say thank you, and I guess if anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Now that this project's dead, I'm going to be working on, I guess, snarkifying the consensus layer, so like the Beam project. And yeah, so that's cool. If anyone has any questions, I guess like put up their hand. I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions?
You mentioned that the scope was reduced, but you also said earlier that in a way portal nodes are just key value stores. So does it really matter which data they store and in which way? Like how much easier did it go to implement a portal node like this?
Yeah, so in terms of like, I guess they could store any data. In terms of Portal, basically like the idea would be like every piece of content is provable, and if the node couldn't prove it, it wouldn't store it. So for the case of like history, normally we would like be storing like every single like header, and then if like someone offered you a receipt, you would like try to fetch the header from the network. If you couldn't do that, you would probably like say this appears malicious. So I would say because you can prove like any piece of data your node is offered, and you would only accept data you could prove, we're kind of fine in that case, if I answered your question.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for the talk.
Yeah, I think Portal is a real cool project. So, or was, because you mentioned it's dead, but
Yeah.
is there no chance that, I don't know, for example, Off-Chain Labs bought Prism, right? Is there no chance that someday or two or something picks up and the work continues? I mean, I know there is no money to make with Portal probably, right? But it's all about the ethers, but maybe if some layer 2 is listening, I mean, they make a lot of money with Ethereum while running the sequencer. Maybe they can pick up and you can continue. Would be awesome.
Yeah, so I think there is like two potential clients would have a lot of buying for this. So Portal was built on Discovery v5, which is like how Ethereum nodes like Discover appears. That was built by Felix, the head of the Geth team. He's like super interested in Portal. So I think in that way, the project could be extended. But early on, Portal got a lot of buy-in from like Nimbus or like the IFT, the Free like Technology Foundation. I forget their name. They rebranded. They used to be Status. Status is really big fans of Portal and like what it was like working on. To my knowledge, they're still funding the development on the stripped down version. And I believe if it actually does well over the next 2 years, I assume they'd probably boot up State because it's like kind of like what's the point of just having like block history? I think State was like a really big challenging problem, which would have provided a lot of value. I think we were pretty close to shipping it. We were about to ship like latest like headers, bodies, and receipts with a delay of 1 receipt, about 2 weeks. Like a lot of the testing and like specification work was done. We were just like finishing implementing it on the client side. So yeah, I think it might potentially like depending what happens with like history expiry and like how that's adopted. But I think it's somewhat of a low priority as well, just because there's like easier ways to do history expiry, like having like an Amazon like S3 bucket, which nodes just download from, which seems like a really like quick solution that a lot of people will start with.
Thanks.
If no more questions, thank you very much for everyone who attended, and yeah, have a good day.